I'd love to pass it on to Amy. Amy, welcome on stage. The mic is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chido, for that incredible beginning to this conversation. I have been looking forward to talking with Erica about her new book for quite some time. I've actually got a physical early copy of her book on my desk. I smelled it, I read it, I flipped through it. I have not read the entire book yet, but I am going to be digging in over the next week, as I typically like to pick some of my favorite books to write about and talk about. And hers really caught my eye because as we talked about digital wellness, digital body language is kind of a new frontier. And because her book is talking about how we build trust and connection, I thought this conversation would be amazing to have on Clubhouse. Now, this conversation is being recorded so we can share it with others after this, but I just want to welcome these moments where we can have some real conversation one-on-one with a best-selling author talking about her brand new book. So without further ado, Erica, tell us all about digital body language, why you wrote this book, and what is digital body language?
Thank you so much, Amy, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you. So what is digital body language? Well, digital body language really serves the same purpose as traditional body language did in our face-to-face conversations, and it's important for all the same reasons. We all know that we rely on nonverbal body language to connect and build trust. The head nod, the smile, the firm handshake, the lean in. These were the signals and cues that allowed us to make meaning. And research shows that we make meaning out of body language for about 70% of our traditional communication. But in a digital world, digital body language is essentially the subtext that we embed in each and every one of our online messages, whether it's an email, a text, or a Zoom call. And digital body language shows up in a lot of ways. It could be how quickly you respond to a message. It could be the use of punctuation in a way to imply excitement, passive aggressiveness, or anger. And it could simply be cues physically that you show on a video screen.
Beautiful. And so in your book, one of the concepts that really caught my attention was about how we are in this world of nonverbal body cues where it's kind of like we have a cueless workplace culture now. What does that look like as we think about how the past year of remote work has shifted the way that we think about digital body language?
So I think a great way to share a story around your wonderful question, Amy, is a scenario. Imagine, you've stayed up all night working on a last minute project that your boss needs at 8 a.m. You rush into the office, at 7:55, you hand it to the boss. You see the relief in her face. She smiles. She says, thank you. You see her give it to her boss, and you feel valued. You feel appreciated. You know that your colleague knew how hard you worked. Now, let's imagine this in a digital world. In the exact same situation, your boss may have sent an email. You may have stayed up all night working hard. In that early morning, you may have gotten a response or maybe no response to the email of the deliverable. Maybe you got an email, but it said THX period, which, let's be honest, does not feel like a true thank you in our digital world. And so one of the things that's so important, because we are truly cueless in our digital world, is that we have to understand what was implicit in traditional body language. All of the cues that showed respect, empathy, trust, now has to be explicit in our digital body language.
Such a great point. I'm curious about, why you chose to write this book now. Like, what you've been focusing on big potential and communication for quite some time, but why this book was the one that emerged for you in the writing process? What were you so passionate about?
Amy, it's a great question, and I'm going to share an answer, and then I'll, in the spirit of it, I'll even bring in Chido or Jamie or others to share what they're resonating with so far. I think that, I grew up as a shy and introverted girl, like, for all my life. I was an Indian immigrant kid in suburban Pittsburgh in a a neighborhood that was very conservative. I was the only Indian kid in my class, and I struggled to find my voice and my place. And in every report card from kindergarten through 12th grade, I often got straight A's, but every teacher said, I wish Erica spoke up more in class. I was more of an observer than really a participant. And one of the things that I developed because I was so shy was an ability to really observe others and read their body language. Why, how did certain popular girls get seen with their, heads raised and shoulders back? Why were some of the older kids slouching during school assemblies, signaling that they were cool? And ending up understanding traditional body language actually gave me an edge as I started my career. It helped me understand how to signal confidence, how to build trust with others, how to engage people that you've never met before. And it became one of my superpowers to get, ridiculously hard jobs and get into the schools I wanted to. But one of the things I realized about 5 years ago was that today, we don't just need traditional body language. We're all immigrants, kind of the way I was an immigrant to traditional body language as a child, to this new world of digital body language. And I kept seeing the same communication problems coming up. It was, how do I connect with people of different age groups? Why is there so much misunderstanding at work? And I think a lot of it, I realized, had to do with the fact that there was no playbook for how we communicate in a digital world. We had the playbook from courses and on-the-job feedback for traditional body language, but we didn't have it for digital. So 4 years ago, I pitched this book to publishers. It took me a year to get it sold to a publisher in 2018, after spending an entire year of 2017 working on it. Finally, it did. Then it took about 3 more years of detailed research. Then COVID-19 hit, and it became even more prevalent and important. And I embedded new research around Zoom meetings, the new video world that we're in with email anxiety and video fatigue already. And the book is now coming out in 5 weeks. So I guess you could say it's something I was excited to write a year ago, but it's really been a calling for my entire life.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And kudos on persevering through that incredible process. I know that's rigorous and heart-wrenching, and yet you here are at this cusp of being able to launch your book. I know it comes out May 11th, but it's available for pre-order on Amazon. So if anyone's interested in getting a copy of it, I can't wait to dig in more because it speaks so much to what we're experiencing. I found in my research that it depends what part of the country you live in, what your age is, and what your industry is on how quickly you think that you should respond to an email. So if you are a finance person in New York and you're a Gen Zer, you would expect a response to your email within about 15 minutes. But if you are living in the Midwest and you are in your 50s working for a nonprofit, your expectation of an appropriate response time might be, say, a week. And so when you put those two people on the same team together, you can imagine the conflict that comes there, not to mention all the misunderstandings with different Slack channels versus text versus social media versus email and phone, and all of those miscommunications plus emojis plus now this expectation time, it causes a real rub. So Chido, I'm going to turn it over to you to open up the floor to hear if other people are experiencing this as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. So hand raising is open. So if anyone wants to come in and have an ask or share on digital body language, please, you're welcome to come and invite us. I beg your pardon. You're invited to come and share with us. Thank you for coming, Will. Will, it's exciting to have you here. I see, Will, you're IT project manager. You're from Canada like me. I'm a Canadians fan. You're a Leafs fan. We won't argue. It's okay. You're forgiven. Do you have a question? De rien. Do you have a question for Erica or Amy? Did anything come up for you while she was speaking on digital body language? The mic is yours.
Well, first of all, Jamie, thanks for bringing me into the group. That was a nice notification, and I enjoyed the talk so far. So thank you for that as well. I love your premise, and I agree with your analysis of what's missing. So through that was great. I question the one piece of the application in that we're still using body language even when it doesn't exist, because body language is through our senses, right? So we're still getting neurologically stimulated from the screens, from the sounds, the whole, I'm sure you've gone into it deeply with the dopamine reactions and the addiction to social media and all these other things. So I think the starting point is not necessarily that we don't have body language. It's that we're reading body language of a body that doesn't exist and doesn't match the people we think we're talking to. Because it's this mismatch of our own perception and the computers and the lights and the beeps and everything else. So the solution is great. We've got to figure it out, right? The analysis is great. I'm confused right there in the middle. Like, is my question or my...
Yeah.
It's
a great... Will, it's a beautiful point. And I agree with you. I don't think body language has disappeared. It is transformed. That is what has happened. The body... as you said, we are still using our body language cues, but the way that others are reading the body of our language looks different. They are reading, punctuation marks in emails to imply certain meanings, even if we don't intend to have those meanings, which means that yes, we still have head nods and smiles and pursed lips and shrugged shoulders that signal certain cues. But because the recipient can't see them on the other side, we have to understand in many ways that there are other digital body language cues we may not be realizing that are apparent or others are making a meaning around that we have to become conscious of today. Does that make sense, Will?
No, absolutely. I'm just like...
One of the things I think that is what might be interesting for you is there's a research study called the online disinhibition effect. And basically what it shows is that neurologically, when we are behind a screen communicating on video, on a Zoom, or on a phone call, or an email with the same person than if we were face-to-face, we're more likely to drop our guards, we're more likely to mask what we truly feel, we're more likely to be ruder and forego formalities. And on the other side, an individual may be more likely, even with our traditional body language signals being the same, may be more likely to feel less empathy from us. And so I think as you said, I agree that body language hasn't disappeared. We're using it, but there is a shift in how the recipient may engage with the body, the different levels of bodies of our language, if I get a little meta for you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just think that the body language that we're reading, like our starting point, because, as you said, we're and as the study clearly said, we're changing the way that we speak, right? We're not speaking in as friendly a way. We're taking offense. We're being more like it's when we're reading the language, you're 100%. But I wonder if the cause of it is that from an evolutionary perspective, we only read body language from, say, either like weather, an event, or a person, a human being. But right now, half of the body language that we're getting is coming from a machine, which doesn't fit with our entire development to understand in that channel, right? That's a body language channel. It's an unnatural thing that's influencing us more than anything else. So I think our starting point of the body language, like I'm just maybe looking at it from another point and seeing what you're saying on the other side, that it's not necessarily what we're reading from the other person. It's what we're reading from the machine that shouldn't be interpreted as body language, and that's what's throwing us off, right? Does that make sense?
I think that's exactly right. Jamie, do you want to join in? I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I really appreciate the diverse perspectives on this because I also interpret body language on a few different levels. So how Chido and I have been flickering the microphone, I interpret that as digital body language of me applauding, of agreeing, of connecting in that way. And then when you take another step back of that's the body language of the screen, of how my icon's flickering because I'm speaking right now, but my physical body language, I'm actually sitting on a grounding mat on a yoga block trying to be fully present in this conversation. Whereas when I was on Zoom with Amy earlier and we're making website edits, I'm so close to the computer screen. When I looked at the camera, I was in shock that that was the body language that I was appearing as. And it reminded me to take a step back, put my shoulders back, and really connect with my physical body language. So I feel like there's so many layers to this topic. So I'm really excited to continue the conversation, because from the digital perspective of what the lights are on the screen and what's appearing on the physical technology versus like my physical body language and how it's being connected and received. So many layers. I'm not even sure where to begin, but that's all I have to share for now. Thank you.
Chido speaking. I just want to reset the room because I see we have Simon and Sophie who just joined us, and welcome. We're talking to Erica Dawn, and she is talking about her book, Digital Body Language, How to Build Trust and Connection No Matter the Distance. I don't know about you guys, but I am so heavily connected to my tech because of the way I run my business. I have an online business. I have family all over the world, and I'm really loving this discussion because it's really making me be mindful of the way I speak and my body language, because there is this new translation that I'm even more mindful of, especially now after hearing Erica speak about, how you say in your book, Erica, which I really loved. You said how we talk the talk, but now we have to write the talk. And that was very profound for me, because we got to now write as we talk. And if anything, this is not going away. So it's almost like learning an additional language. There's French and English, and I think the more tech is becoming this evolution and way we communicate, this skill set is going to be important. For example, my mother lives in Zimbabwe. She lives in Africa, and she is the emoji queen. She's the emoji queen because that's how she wants to communicate her excitement, and even something like that for, older woman to be using technology, and how she's acclimated to speaking through emojis now. She gets it, and how little stuff like that are going to be more ingrained in the way we communicate. I'm wondering, are there any other things you're seeing from traditional body language that we are definitely going to be converting into the digital space? I know emojis is a great example, how I think that's normal to see as we converse now with people, but are we seeing any other nuances that we are trying to communicate from traditional to digital that are becoming very clear in your research?
Absolutely. I have a lot of things to share. The first thing I want to share is actually along the lines of how our digital experience and the digital shift is changing our human physical body language. And then I'll talk about how to translate both. So, one of the things we've seen, can everyone hear me? One of the things we've seen is that individuals are more likely to look down at their phones multiple times, even when they're face-to-face. So we miss the direct eye contact. We miss the lean-in. Individuals, after a year of being virtual, are also more likely to think in bullet points, to expect people to speak in those bullet points. And we are not as apt to look each other in the eye anymore. And this was already happening pre-pandemic. There was research done by scholars like Sherry Turkle on this, and the bias and the likelihood of individuals in a gathering together to look down at their phones. But what this is actually doing is already pre-pandemic, because of the digital integration in our physical engagement, whether it's screen shares or TVs on, or laptops open or phones. We were already starting to miss certain cues. We were already starting to miss the lean in a sales conversation, the fully direct eye contact. And so digital body language, I believe, is just as much about how we engage remotely or in a hybrid format as it is when we go back to the office and we're surrounded by computers and we're all in the boardroom together and three people are multitasking in one corner and individuals are not on the other side. So one of the things that I think is really valuable to think about is how will we all make sure that we start to master these skills in a way where we can engage in a hybrid format. And I didn't really answer your question there, Chido, so I want to go back and answer your question now, which was really on the fact that there are different ways that we're replacing traditional signals when they're not present with digital signals. So you already talked about emojis as one, but let me give you a few others. So in traditional body language, when we're listening attentively, we head nod or bob. We have our head tilted to one side. We make direct eye contact. Now in the world of digital body language, we may instead like a text or praise another's input in a thoughtful email, or we may make a detailed comment verbally or in the chat box on a video call instead of just saying, I agree. Another example is, in traditional body language, if we're thinking about something, we may be stroking our chin or pausing for a few seconds. If we're thinking in digital body language, we may pause during that conference call to take in what's been said. We may use the ellipsis to say we're thinking. We may take those extra few minutes to respond to a text, even if it feels awkward, but it is actually our way of processing information. And I think I'll give you one more. I think nodding specifically is one that really signals I understand you, I hear you, and I'm interested. And how do we show that in digital body language? We may respond quickly to something to show I'm interested. We may, say I completely agree with what you're saying. In a group chat discussion, we may use a thumbs up emoji in a video meeting or on Clubhouse or in other formats. So those are just some simple examples of how traditional moves to digital.
Thank you so much, Chido speaking here. And something came up I just quickly want to share when you said that. Jamie, I don't know if you remember, we were doing a Clubhouse room and someone came on stage and said, I'm new to Clubhouse. It's my first week, but it was strange. And she's like, I've now navigated Clubhouse. She shared a story. She was in a Zoom call and then someone said, I am done speaking. And she thought that was very strange. Like, why would somebody say that? And it wasn't until she was on Clubhouse that she understood that that's how we communicate, that we are finished talking. So it finally came full circle that she was missing this communication style that was an audio communication, that was a Clubhouse signature phrase when we're done speaking. But it's interesting, she saw people tapping their mics on Zoom in agreement, which is a Clubhouse thing. But it was very funny how she was seeing all these nuances that are Clubhouse communication styles in other settings, and because she's an Android, she was not yet on Clubhouse, she didn't understand it. So that was such a good example of how she didn't understand that communication style until she came onto Clubhouse and actually experienced it. So that story really resonated. So thank you for that. And I know Amy, you had something to share as well.
Yes, I'm just fascinated by this conversation. It's definitely getting my brain spinning and thinking in new directions. And one of the questions that I think is on my mind, but others' mind as well, is that after you've raised your awareness of the fact that we do have digital body language and that it's a little bit different, Erica, can you share with us some of your advice about how we can go about changing our digital body language to be more aligned with our offline body language, or maybe moving us more to the kind of leader or person that we want to be when we're communicating?
I think this is one where it can feel harder than ever, because let's be honest, technology creates masks. Is someone being passive aggressive in their thank you email? Is someone being nice in their email? Are they being grateful? It's easy to read into things. And I think that at the end of the day, in all of our communications, we are actually answering two questions that guides the signals we send, whether traditional body language or digital. The first question we're always answering is, who has more or less power? If someone has a lot more power than us, we may be a bit different. We may be a little bit more formal if they're a boss, if there's someone that we're interviewing with, if they are someone we've never met before. But if they're a close friend, we may, sprinkle in all of our symbols, emojis. We may be more informal and truly ourselves instantly. And I think that assessing the power level or power dynamics can be helpful to knowing what are the right signals to send, or, the true signals for you in that period. The other question that we always are answering that guides these signals is how much do we trust each other? Are we, individuals that have deep trust because we work at the same company, or we, join the same clubs on Clubhouse, or again, is there very little trust in this moment? So we may choose to err on the side of formality. And I am not at all saying we shouldn't be ourselves fully digitally. I'm a big proponent of showing your authentic style. I also think, though, it's important to understand that technology can create masks. And with the lack of those cues on the recipient side, at certain points, knowing your audience, knowing when to, measure the trust and power gaps can be really helpful, so that when you can at least get on the video call or that in-person meeting, hopefully soon, you'll be able to connect on those cues in a deeper way.
Chido speaking. I would just want to reset the room before we welcome and hear Shami's question. Welcome to the stage, Shami. I want to welcome Eric, Sophia, and Precious, and Princess, who just entered our room. You guys have just entered this amazing conversation. We're so excited to have Erica. Erica Dhawan is an author of a new book called Digital Body Language, How to Build Trust and Connection No Matter the Distance. And we're talking about mastering digital body language. This is a nuance that is going to see us well into the future. Erica's been doing this for a long time. She is a recognized authority leader and advisor, and she's even been named one of the Think 50s speakers and she's called Oprah of Management Thinkers. So you guys are in a treat, because we are talking about something that not many people are probably cognizant that we're doing, and you guys are probably talking in a digital body language and you don't even know you're doing it. So it's so exciting to learn how we're really doing this and where this is going to be taking us as we work more remotely and online. So welcome to the conversation. We've been having Amy interviewing Erica. If you would love to come in and pose a question to Erica, hand raising is open, so please raise your hands, come on stage. We welcome. If you have a question, an ask, or share, please come on stage. We'd love to have you. So we're going to be closing up, I think, maybe in another 10 minutes. So we would love to have you on stage with us. Shami, welcome. Shami and I actually did a room together, and she hosts a Wellness Wednesday room. She is a yoga teacher, and she's really passionate about bringing wellness to many people's lives. Shami, in this topic, and the mic is yours, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Chido. All right, so I literally have a bit of a comment, kind of opens into a question, and I'm sorry I'm driving, so I hope you guys can hear me. So I was laughing because when you guys were talking about body language and traditional body language, I was like, none of this body language ever made sense to me before the pandemic. And I think one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that body language is cultural, very cultural. And before this pandemic, it was geographical. Like, culture was very geographical. So things like, I remember one time I was in a session and they were like, yeah, when you meet someone and you go for a job interview, make sure you shake their hand and you look them in the eye. And I was like, oh my God, this is so dated and so awkward to me. It felt awkward. So thank you, pandemic. I hope that phases out. But I wonder, like, do you see some cultural trends in, the body language, digital body language? Like, what do people in Italy do versus the people in the USA versus the people in Zimbabwe? Like, how much does that contribute? Like, where you're from geographically and your culture. I am Shami, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Shami, for that beautiful question. chapter 10 of my book is all about digital body language across cultures. And I think you said it beautifully that in many ways, we have been living with all of these body language differences across cultures. I grew up in an Indian culture where, the hands palms together was how we greeted people, not the handshake. So I definitely connect with that. And, digital body language does emerge across cultures differently. And I'll give you a few examples. So in one of my stories in my book for my research, I interviewed a guy named Sam who was from the United Kingdom, and he was working with a team in Brazil. And Sam assumed it was basic courtesy to preface all of his opinions on work emails with words like, I regret, or unfortunately, this won't work, but we can do this. And all of his informal Brazilian colleagues found Sam's language completely off-putting and rude. They said, why is Sam so rude? Because in Brazilian culture, using emojis, using intensive adverbs was actually very much part of their culture. Another example, there was one guy I interviewed who was in Northern California who worked at a technology company, and he sent a request to one of his peers in Mumbai, India, a peer at the same company. The peer's name was Arvind, and he later found out, when he sent that work request to Arvind, he later found out that Arvind's boss was very mad at him, and it was because Arvind's boss thought in the hierarchy of India, you have to go through the boss to send a work request to someone junior than him. Whereas John, who was in San Francisco, had, more of a flatter hierarchy around how he engaged. So those are just some very simple examples. I have other ones where, my friends in New York say, why are our German colleagues so rude when they just have more of a to the point style on Zoom calls where they're succinct. And these are just some examples of how this translates. And in traditional body language, there's research called high context versus low context cultures. High context cultures where communication is more implicit and relies heavily on nonverbal cues, and especially countries like Central Europe, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, Asia fall into that category. Low context, on the other hand, traditionally more Western countries definitely thrive in more explicit communication. So I really resonate with what you shared, Shami, and it definitely applies in what the traditional body language differences were in culture beforehand, now in some ways are amplified online.
Thank you so much. Sorry, before anyone else adds in, because I think this is going to be my last contribution, I wanted to also ask that do you think that the digital space we're in is going to, what has been accelerated by the pandemic, do you think it's going to change people to be more tolerant of that, like digital and in-person differences in body languages, or are we going to stay in our camps? Hopefully, if we read your book, we won't. But yeah, thank you. I'm Shami, and I'm done speaking.
It's a great question, and I think that it's not an either or. We're seeing a spectrum of people that are really ready to embrace the power of what our digital shift has unlocked to be less geographically biased, more inclusive, behind a room where we can have so many of you part of this conversation and not have to be in a physical room together and share our emotions, share our tone, share our sentiment together using a lot of these digital cues that we're sharing with one another. At the same time, I think there are a lot of people that are fearful, that can't wait to get back to the office. We see, in corporate America, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, saying we are a work from anywhere culture. But then the CEO of Chubb, a large insurance company, saying we are a work from office culture. So not everyone will be the same on this. I like to say there are digital natives ready to thrive in this revolution, and what I call digital adapters who still feel like immigrants to a new country. And I think that we have to bring others along. We have to be patient and work together so that we're not calling people backward if they're struggling with it, but helping them grow along.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing and opening that conversation. And your follow-up question was actually just where I was thinking about as well, because I think sometimes we hear, Erica, that people bemoaning how things have changed and shifted so much that we even have to wrestle with and adapt to this idea of digital body language. Like it's something that we could push off. But it occurs to me that we're also going through that seismic shift of body language offline with the pandemic, with deeply held beliefs that we thought would never change. For instance, in the U.S., the habit of shaking hands with one another, or perhaps the hug that seemed like it would never ever go away, and here we are now moving to elbow bumps or perhaps head nods. So if that changes, if our offline body language has changed, it seems like now it's not that big a leap for our digital body language to change and adapt and continue growing. But perhaps the speed and the rate of the platforms that we're using is changing. Can you speak a little more to what you see trending and happening both in the workplace and in the home, individual use of technology, and how those dynamics are shifting?
I think you said it best, Amy. It's a seismic shift. And similar to, if you may remember, if we're old enough to remember when words like awesome and my bad and super were not workplace words. They were colloquial words that were used by teenagers. If we can remember when, even a lot of emojis were things that Japanese teenagers did. We may know and see that these things evolve and then they pervade workplaces, they pervade communities, they pervade family and ways of speaking and engaging. And I think that we are seeing a faster shift than ever in that. Even 5 years ago, it was not as comfortable or safe to throw in an emoji in a workplace email. Today, it's more commonplace than ever, even coming from CEOs and C-suite. Okay, not for, your new client that you're trying to sell something to, but maybe very quickly thereafter because of the lack of the ability to meet face-to-face. And I think that as we go back to be offline, this has not been a 2-month experiment. It's been a 15 or 16 or hopefully less, probably 18-month experiment of being digital. And so I think that these behaviors are here to stay. And we are moving faster. We are using more symbolic content to say what we mean. I think that GIFs and memes are not trivial things. They're the next level after emojis and exclamation marks. And in some ways, I think that the opportunity for all of us is to embrace it, to bring others along, and to not lose the power of human body language, which we all know is the best way to build connection and trust. And I do think that there is a generation being raised in primarily, especially in the last year, digital body language instead of physical body language connection. So I think there will be a moment where we'll also have to think about how do we relearn the skills of being with one another in a room.
So beautifully said. And I know our time is coming to a close. You've been so generous with your time, Erica, because I know we went a little longer than we said that we were going to go today, but the conversation is rich, and I've loved hearing from everyone. The final question is just if people want to follow up and learn more, I know that you have a survey that is available on your website. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and where people can go for more information?
Thank you, Amy and Chido and Jamie, for hosting this wonderful conversation together. I am so excited, you can tell, to talk all things digital body language. On my website at ericadhawan.com, I created a digital body language quiz based on my 4 years of research, identifying what allowed certain individuals and teams to thrive in digital communication versus others not. And if you go to my website, ericadhawan.com, you can find it on my Clubhouse profile. you can get access to the free quiz, and what it will show you is your digital body language style by decoding some of your preferences, and it will also give you a detailed report that will help you understand some of the signals you may be likely sending, some of the things to be thoughtful of, especially when others have different digital body language styles than you. And if you enjoy that, I hope you'll check out the book, Digital Body Language. It's already out for pre-order and any book site, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and keep the conversation going about these important skills here to stay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Erica. And I know you're going to be joining us again on May 7th for Digital Wellness Day, which we are so excited about. Chido and Jamie and I and Sophie and Melissa, I know there's a lot of people in this room who are actively looking forward to Digital Wellness Day on May 7th. And Erica will be doing another session a little bit longer with a different format for conversation. So if you want to check out a different style of digital body language, that's a great way to do so. But if you have not yet signed up for Digital Wellness Day, there is a website, digitalwellnessday.com. And we just went live today where you can host events and you can attend events, and we'll be adding many more events in the coming week. It just went live today, so we just have a sprinkling of the first few events that are starting to trickle in. But Erica is leading the charge there to help us get that day kicked off. It's a day to rethink your relationship to technology. So help us spread the word. We'd love to have as many participants around the globe as possible, and particularly globally as we're trying to get this message out. Chido, Jamie, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Chido speaking. Erica, I really appreciate this conversation because I feel like I'm also trying to find new ways to get my communication for people to know, like, and trust me, and knowing that I'm not totally off in how I communicate, that I do feel sometimes bad about, like, am I adding emojis? I want to add a smiley face, or I'm always second guessing the way I communicate online, but it's good and reassuring that this is a trend that we're going to be leading into, just to get more connected with people as we are, trying to still keep those authentic relationships going. I think this is something to look forward to, and a new language that I'm excited to have in my toolkit. So I'm excited to get the book and learn a little bit more. So thank you so much for this book, and I'm really excited to hear you on Digital Wellness Day. And I'm complete. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is Jamie Rose speaking. And Erica, I'm so excited to continue sharing this book and building off this conversation. I think awareness, as we talked about tonight, is such an important key foundational aspect. So I'm really looking forward to sharing these tools and resources to spark the conversation with others that might not be aware yet. So thank you again for your time and presence. I really look forward to continuing the conversation and sharing our amazing insights and discoveries today.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We're going to close the room now, but if you want more information, you can visit with Erica, ericadhawan.com or digitalwellnessday.com. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.